right, good evening. I'd like to welcome all of you to our Candidates Forum for Town Supervisor, and welcome our candidates. Thank you both for attending and sharing your views with your community. I am Susan Maggiato from the Rivertown's League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that never supports or opposes candidates or parties. There are a few housekeeping things I need to discuss. First of all, our taping policy. There is a videographer recording this forum, and only this videographer is authorized. So please silence your cell phones and no recording from the audience. It will be broadcast, this forum will be broadcast over Greenburgh Public Access channels for 76 Cablevision, 33 Fios, and then we'll distribute it throughout the villages that have the capability to air them, and it will also be posted on our website. The content of the forum is owned by the League, so I told you there's no private recording, and then our policy is our forums are shown only in their entirety. None of it is ever edited for campaign purposes. On to a happier subject, early voting. For the first time, voters in New York State can vote early, beginning this Saturday and going until Sunday, November 3rd. There are two sites in Greenburgh Town Hall and the Dobbsbury Village Hall. And I hope many of you, if not all of you, got postcards from the Board of Elections telling you about early voting and telling you what your site is. You must go to one of those two assigned sites. If you're not at the correct site, you won't be able to vote. We have information as you came in on early voting, and there's information on the website you can go to find out if you're not sure where you should go. I just have a question. I'm just wondering how much people know about it. I mean, how many in the audience are aware that you will be able to vote early this year? Excellent. And then all of you know where to go? Perfect. So the BOE and other entities there seem to be doing their job well, which is good. Yes.
On the early voting, will it be the complete ballot? It's not just the vote. It would be if there's any state referendums or anything.
Yes, definitely. It will. The question was, will it be the complete ballot? Whatever your ballot would be on election day, when you go to the polls, that's what you'll be voting on in the early voting. You cannot, of course, take it back and change your vote. Once you vote early, you're done. So I guess my next order of business is to introduce our moderator. Our moderator this evening is Susan Polos, a resident of Katona, New York, and a member of the board of the Northern Westchester League of Women Voters. Mrs. Polos is a school librarian in Greenwich, Connecticut, and active in the American Library Association. She served for 6 years as a trustee at Katona Village Library and has recently been elected clerk of session at Katona Presbyterian Church. So I will turn the meeting over to Susan. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Susan Polos, representing the League of Women Voters. It's my pleasure to assist you today. I am merely here to facilitate a process which is between you, the voters, and the candidates. I live in Katona, not in this district. You are here to listen to the candidates' views about significant issues here in this community and to make your decisions. It's important that we allow the candidates to make the best use of this time. For that reason and for others, I ask you to refrain from applause during any segment of the program. Please hold your applause until the close. This is not a rally for those who have made up their minds, but a nonpartisan meeting for those who have not. No audience recording of this program is permitted. Silence your cell phones. Today, we will be hearing from Town of Supervisor candidates from Greenburgh. The ground rules are as follows. First, opening statements, 2 minutes each, in the order of lots drawn before the program. This will be followed by questions submitted on cards provided, and responses will be limited to 1.5 minutes. The order will rotate. A timekeeper will let the candidates know when there are 30 seconds left and when to stop. Thank you to the timekeeper. The candidates are, in order by lot, Paul Feiner and Lucas Chaffee. We will hear first from Paul Feiner. The opening statements are 2 minutes. The timer will let you know when you have 30 seconds left, and the other candidate may have a 30-second rebuttal if necessary. Mr. Feiner.
Greenburgh is a town government that works. We are a long-term success story. We manage a town that is a desirable place to live in. Current and future residents are attracted to the highest level of services and the superior quality of life that Greenburgh delivers. We have a great police department, outstanding sanitation, outstanding highway services, a rich array of parks and recreational facilities, and programs for our children. We are always looking to improve the way we manage your town, and I'm proud that we have a very efficient and hard-working staff that tries hard to serve you honestly and faithfully. I work non-stop to make improvements for the town. Over the long term, we have accomplished major improvements in all aspects of governance. The library is packed with great programs and appreciative patrons. We have addressed infrastructure needs. Our financial health is great. Our operations keep getting more efficient. We're known for our community outreach, and we have fostered strong relations with county and state level officials who we work together with to get good services and obtain millions of dollars of grants and legislative cooperation. I'm effective because of my years of experience as town supervisor, as a county legislator before that, and before that as a community activist. The office of town supervisor is the highest office in the town of Greenburgh. I'm fully prepared and have the experience necessary to help the town become an even better place during the next 2 years. During my tenure as town supervisor, we've never rested on our past successes. We're always looking to make Greenburgh better. When considering your vote, keep in mind that the office of town supervisor is not an entry-level job, and that in my 28 years of experience, I've developed relationships and gained an understanding of the functions of government which are available to the town, and people could call me 438-1343 or 478-1219, my cell phone and my home, anytime before or after the election.
Mr. Chaffee?
No rebuttal.
Okay. Thank you. Then you may have your opening statement, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Greenburgh. My name is Lucas Chaffee. I'm an independent running for town supervisor. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this very important forum, for my wife for all the support these past 5 months, from when we started getting petitions to where we are today, and especially Greenburgh residents. This is just the start of a transformation in Greenburgh's government that will start to involve you much, much more than you ever have been involved before. I'm a West Point graduate, a U.S. Army Ranger, a combat veteran, an open government advocate who worked with the Obama administration and many different agencies. I want to tell you one story that makes me remember how I learned about leadership. I start thinking about November 2002. In the Mojave Desert, we're on a patrol with 39 soldiers getting ready for a morning attack against an opposing force of American soldiers that are there to train us and push us harder than we've ever been pushed before. They're there to defeat us because we are the ones preparing for combat. We get to our objective. The soldiers are exhausted from 2 weeks of sleep deprivation. They're cold, and morale is low. The battle starts, and we are wiped out, and it's intended to be that way. I look around and see who's left, and I say, let's get up, gather our equipment, and help that next unit right next door. The reason I tell you this story is because I think our government needs to be run differently. It's not built around one man, it's a team effort. We have very big challenges around tax control and climate that now demand us to work together more than ever before. When you elect me on November 5th, you will see an inclusive government working with you. 28 years is long enough. We didn't have social media, we didn't have computers the way we have them now. We can now empower our residents to work with the town. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
We are a team effort, the town of Greenburgh. We're a team that has gotten a AAA bond rating, the highest ratings any municipality could get. We're a team that was able to get the MTA to agree to put elevators at the Hartsdale train station. We're a team that's gotten millions of dollars of grants for 6 miles of new sidewalks and crosswalks. We just got a team that just got a $250,000 grant from the state to get food scrap recycling programs. We're a team that was able to increase recycling to once a week when we reduced the workforce by from 40 people to 43 in the sanitation, and much more.
Thank you. We will now go to questions. Do we have questions? Waiting for the questions.
Yeah.
While we wait, I'm just going to let you know that the candidates will answer in rotating order, taking turns going first and then second. And they will take 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer with a 30-second rebuttal optional if needed. Okay. So the first candidate to answer this first question will be Mr. Chaffee. What procedures do you propose to institute in order to reduce the property tax burden on town residents?
First, let's think about how we got where we are. Mr. Finer's been in office for 28 years. For the last 20 years, he has increased the property tax levy an average of 4%. That is double the rate of inflation. While population has only increased 7%, the property tax levy in Greenburgh, both of them, have increased over 125%. So when we think about property taxes in Greenburgh, we think about Mr. Finer's property taxes to justify the budget that he has created. If property taxes have kept pace with the rate of inflation, the property tax levy would be 1/3 less. What will I do to get property taxes under control? Number one, I will involve residents to a much greater degree. We're going to freeze the property tax levy for 2 years, something Mr. Finer says was not feasible about 14 days ago. 5 days later, he says he's coming out with a 1-year tax freeze. He's copying our campaign because he sees the traction we're having with voters. Property taxes are forcing residents out of their homes. Mr. Finer's administration has failed to collect $14 million in property taxes from people that owe them for more than 5 years. He does not even have a full-time person working on this problem. I will make sure we collect the money that is due, and that is how we will keep our property taxes down for everyone else who pays them on time.
Thank you. Mr. Finer?
First of all, we are proud of the fact that the town has a AAA bond rating, that the state controls that we don't have fiscal stress, that every year, unlike other municipalities, we've complied with the tax cap. We have never exceeded the tax cap since I've been in office. You can't say I'm going to have a 0% tax hike before you do the research. There's issues, gas increases, medical benefits increase, retirement increases, you have contracts. That's it.
I guess that's the rebuttal, so now you can... And so how does that work? Just 1 second. So, okay, I think he was answering, not rebutting. So another minute, yes.
I basically meet every week with retired management consultants. Richard Bobby, Bill McGrath. Bill was an executive at Con Ed, lives in Hartsdale, was operational officer at pace, and they basically give us advice on how we could run the town better. We've done internal audits of different departments. For example, a number of years ago, we had major problems in the courts. Now we don't have any major problems because we've listened to all the recommendations that the courts have, so the courts are run smoothly. We are doing a work order system as a result of an internal review by Woodard and Curran. We are having a health and safety review. These are internal reviews that we do. Every year we take another department and we look at ways of managing those departments better. We have been foreclosing on properties, and like what you said, that there's been arrears. However, before we just foreclose, I send people 8 or 9 letters, and I try to help people avoid foreclosure by connecting them with not-for-profit organizations. There's a lot more I want to say.
30-second rebuttal. So, Mr. Feiner, yes, has foreclosed on several properties. The truth is the town doesn't even know how much in back taxes it is owed. You can find that out for yourself by asking. When you go and ask the person that's collecting it, when you ask Mr. Feiner, what is the collectible amount? They have failed to collect for so long they don't even know the answer. And in terms of what we can do to save, Mr. Feiner talked about implementing all the court's recommendations. There were 64 recommendations, not just from the court, about how to solve for our very quickly growing budget. Over the past 3 months, he has failed to describe, in the past 8 years when that report came out, which of those 64 recommendations he has implemented. That is not an open government.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Feiner, you will be the first to answer the next question. We only need a rebuttal after the last person has spoken, I believe, right? Thank you. So, the question is, what is your position regarding Edgemont leaving Greenburgh?
Excuse me, Edgemont can't leave Greenburgh. It could incorporate as a village, but it can't leave Greenburgh.
I'm reading the question as it was written.
The issue of Edgemont's attempt to incorporate and leave the unincorporated town of Greenburgh has dominated the news for several years. My personal belief, which I've stated previously, is that I feel we're better together. However, in my role as town supervisor and based on my personal beliefs, Edgemont has an absolute right to petition for incorporation. However, I believe in the rule of law and will support the laws as currently written. However, my job as town supervisor is to enforce the existing law. It's not to make up the law. It's not to do what I would like. It's basically to just adhere to the law. So I believe maintaining the rights of those in Edgemont and the rights of those residents who might be impacted negatively by an Edgemont incorporation share the same, same importance. I should also mention that one of the things that I find very aggravating about this whole process is the cost. We won a lawsuit in the appellate division. There was an Edgemont petition. The Court of Appeals, the appellate division, found that the petition was invalid, and we were awarded court fees. So we expect to get about $32,000 in fees because we won the lawsuit. And it's not only the costs for the people who are filing the petition, but there's so much time and money that's been spent on the incorporation, and that time and money would have been much better spent if we could have all worked together to address problems in Edgemont.
Thank you. Mr. Chaffee?
So this will be the full 90-second answer?
This will be the full minute, yes, minute and a half, 90 seconds.
So
We have, by the way, questions that will build on this, so not the only time you'll get to talk about this issue.
thank you. So I'm from Edgemont, and because of that, I have to, just like the Code of Ethics say, avoid any semblance of impropriety. So because I've engaged so many residents in conversation, train stations, supermarkets, and on Nextdoor and Facebook, I've learned that people are pretty anxious about incorporation. They're wondering, well, why is this candidate from Edgemont coming up here? Is he for incorporation or against incorporation? So one of the first things I put on the platform is that I will recuse myself from doing anything related.
You're not answering the question. I thought we wasn't supposed to jump in like that. I could have been jumped in.
He has 1 minute.
How much time is left
Can
on
you
the
answer to
clock?
respect the person, please?
No, we may not be, you may not shout out from the audience.
Please.
You may not.
Oh, I start shouting.
Okay?
No,
Yes, we can
letting him
restart
shout
your
now.
time.
No, he's shouting now.
You will be asked to leave if you keep talking and interrupt the candidates.
So just as I said, many people are concerned about Edgemont Incorporation, inside and outside Edgemont. So one thing that I will never do is send private investigators to people's homes to try to invalidate petition signatures. That's something Mr. Feiner had done, and if you didn't live in Edgemont, you probably won't know about that. But I'm not here to make it any easier for Edgemont to incorporate or to make it any harder. I will never tell Edgemont residents how they should vote. The town board and I, in order to support my recusal, will choose someone objective, 4 people from outside Edgemont on the town board, plus myself. We choose one person to evaluate the petitions. I will have no hand in making it any easier or harder for Edgemont residents to incorporate. Any contracts with a potential village of Edgemont will have to be approved by the entire town board. I've taken this position because I need to earn Greenburgh's trust. I've only lived in Edgemont since January, and prior to that, I lived in Hastings. I'm born and raised in Edgemont. I love Edgemont, met my wife there. It's a great place to be. And I'm running for supervisor to make our town more open. And that's what's going to happen.
So the next question is a follow-up on that question, which has to do with the financial impact that an Edgemont succession would create. So the question is, do you support the legislation which was discussed by the New York State Legislature that would allow all residents in unincorporated Greenburgh to vote on the Edgemont referendum so that all who are affected have a say in the outcome? That is the question. Mr. Chaplin, I'll leave you first.
So there's interesting legislation that was proposed at New York State, which gives all residents the ability to vote on one minority's incorporation effort. I do not support that because it will have statewide consequences. There is a religious minority that is quite large in upstate New York that is trying to incorporate. And this legislation was designed primarily to prevent them from incorporating. Edgemont's incorporation is a byproduct of that. I do not support making it any harder for any minority of a town, whether it is an economic minority, a racial minority, a religious minority, to become more self-determined. It's fundamentally American to let people have the right to vote, and making it harder for them to have the right to vote, I definitely do not support. When I think about the right to vote, I do not take that for granted at all. January 2005, driving down the streets of Baghdad in a Humvee, Iraqi people had put their fingers in ink to validate that they had voted only one time. That's how they do voter registration. And we're driving by them and they show us their purple fingers to say, you gave us this right to vote. And that is their way of saying thanks. So when I think of voting, that's what I think of. I take nothing about our democracy for granted. And intimidating voters to change their signatures on a petition is un-American.
I'd just like to start by saying that my support for the proposed legislation has nothing to do with my decision to reject the petition, which was based on the statute, not on my personal interpretation. But I do support the legislation, and the reason I support the proposed legislation that would enable everyone in the town to vote is because everybody in the town would be impacted. If Edgemont would incorporate, there's a potential impact of over $17 million to residents of unincorporated Greenburgh. That means that either taxes would go up or services would go down. And I feel that it's not fair for a small group of people to make a decision that impacts everybody in the whole town. Everybody in Edgemont, everybody in unincorporated Greenburgh. The other problem with the state statute is we have an opinion from the Attorney General saying there could be no absentee ballots in these types of incorporation referendums, which would significantly reduce the turnout. We also have seen, there could be a referendum in February in the middle of a snowstorm. You could have 500 people voting, and if 201 people decide to vote for incorporation and everybody else stays home, Edgemont incorporation happens. And to me, that's unfair. So one of the other thoughts I had is if the state looks at the law, they should possibly change the legislation to require at least a majority of the people who live in the community to be able to make the decision. I don't think that a small minority should be able to make a decision that's going to impact people's lives.
Thank you.
Can we get a rebuttal on that?
Yes. 30 seconds.
Protecting minorities is the fundamental aspect of our Constitution. It's the fundamental aspect of our government. When a small group of people feels that they are being unjustly governed, it is their right. And I'm not saying that Edgemont is or is not being unjustly governed. And it's a very divisive topic in Edgemont. If people have a right to vote, that right to vote should not be taken away with the town's legislation because they feel embarrassed that 1/3 of their town doesn't want to be governed by them. Instead, we should look at the root causes. The root causes are a lack of trust. And I hope we get a chance to talk about why there's a deep lack of trust here in the town of Greenburgh.
Thank you. Mr. Finer, why do you support or oppose term limits?
Well, I think that I have a lot of experience, and I think that my experience has been very helpful to the town of Greenburgh. I looked at all the accomplishments I've had just in the past 2 years. It's really, I think, pretty impressive. But at least, I have to admit I'm a little biased. We just agreed. We just reached an agreement. We're turning the West Health housing, abandoned housing into home affordable housing. We built a lot of affordable housing in the town. We're connecting Greenburgh and Knollwood water facilities, which will enable us to provide water in case one of the facilities breaks down. We're going to be turning the Odell House into a museum. It's a historic location. We got a grant for $250,000 for food scrap recycling. I'm right now going to start working. I started working this weekend on trying to improve safety at near the Sacred Heart Church and Central Avenue, where there was an accident injuring 2 kids. I know who to go to. I'm going to reach out to state officials. I'm going to be reaching out to the state DOT, and I'm convinced that that 2 years from now, the state DOT, Central Avenue is going to be much safer. And that's because I have the relationships, I have the connections, and I have the experience, and I know how to get Albany and Washington to act. Otherwise, we got $9 million just for the water infrastructure. We got a few $1 million for more sidewalks. And
Thank you. Mr. Chaffee?
Term limits, I support them. I think about 12 to 16 years is sufficient. All 5 people on the town board will have a say in that. Mr. Finer brought up West Hill. Last week, he mentioned, I want to stand up for this one because it gets me quite upset. This is a real issue that involves actual people, women and children, living in affordable housing. Mr. Finer declared victory by saying, we're getting $600,000 for West Hill. I came back and I said, Mr. Finer, in email to the whole town-wide list, you dropped the lease. We were going to be getting $10 million or more, and you're celebrating $600,000. I don't get, let's just leave it at that. But he doubled down and defended his actions, and he wrote a very long email to the entire town list. And he says, when the second agreement was nearing its end, I received notification from Westchester County that they would like to begin discussions on renewing the lease. I got back to the county and also contacted the Civic Association. Westchester County Executive Rob Astrino, when he was elected, he replaced Andrew Spano. His administration determined there was not adequate need for the facility, and he defunded the important program. When it's my next turn to speak, I'm going to show you how he dropped complete accountability here. You did not hear him say anything about how he dragged his feet, how 108 families went back to wherever they had to go because they didn't have affordable housing here in Greenburgh. Total lack of accountability. Those people are not in this room. That is real.
Thank you.
Yeah, I basically have always tried reaching out to the community, and after the county contacted me saying they wanted to renegotiate the West Hub lease, I contacted the Mayfair Knollwood Civic Association, and I wanted to have discussions with them because I wanted them involved in the process and to believe that government was keeping their word. Because when I was a county legislator, we approved West Hub when we told the community that at that 10 years the shelter was going to close. And then 10 years went by and the lease was renewed. And I don't believe that we should stare people in the back. I feel if we make a promise, we should keep it.
Thank you.
Do I get 30 seconds vote?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Feiner doesn't know that I have memorandums which say it was not just that he went out to reach out to the Civic Association. He waited 6 months, did not even get back to the county. County writes the next letter. It says, on March 25th, we requested a meeting to initiate negotiations. To date, we have not received a response to our request. 5 days later, he responds to the county. Okay, then a year goes by. Then a new administration comes in, the Republican administration that he's blaming everything in, comes into office at the county level, and he says it's their fault. He waited a year. He had the ability to renew the lease. It was $1.2 million a year to our town.
Thank you.
I just rebuttal.
Can we? I think not. We're going to move on, but I'm sure we'll come back to these issues, or similar ones. This is a two-part question. It was it's two different people, but the questions are linked. So, part one, why should the town rely only on grants for sidewalks? Shouldn't the capital budget be funding it with a long-term plan to put sidewalks everywhere? And the other part of the question is, what is the status of the new sidewalk on Hartsdale Road, Four Corners to Greenburgh? And Mr. Chapley will start.
Sidewalks are hugely important, and you would think that something that fundamental would be organized at the town level. You would think that involving the public would be something that happens when we decide which sidewalks we want to build. There isn't even a public list of all the sidewalks that need to be built here in our town. Without a public list, you and I have no idea as to whether our sidewalk will be built in the next year, 2, 3. If that list was made public, it is a tremendous opportunity for residents to get involved and have their say. To say that my sidewalk is number 32, it should be up to number 19. We have no voice when it comes to things like sidewalks and road repair. If the town has this data, why not invite us in as part of the process? We're the ones that walk those streets. We know something about them. Our voice matters. Sidewalks are the tip of the iceberg.
Well, first of all, we've been building a lot of sidewalks. We built about, or have funded about 6 miles of new sidewalks. This year alone, we built a sidewalk on Columbia Avenue. We have another sidewalk on Lawton, which actually was finished about 2 weeks before the accident on Friday at the Lawton Central Avenue location, and highlights the need for sidewalks. We had a meeting last week, about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. We walked North Washington Avenue in Hartsdale, with residents. We're going to start pretty soon sidewalk from Marion Avenue on Central from Marion Avenue to West Hartsdale Avenue on Central Avenue. We got, I think, over $1 million of funding from the state for to have a sidewalk on Hillside Avenue. We'll go 119 all the way to Granada Crescent. We've also got another grant to build a sidewalk on Old Tarrytown Road. And generally, when people come tonight and say they want a sidewalk, we meet with them. We have a site, with people. Not everybody wants sidewalks in front of their homes because there's obstructions that have to be removed. Sometimes people have gates, fences, trees that have to be removed if you have a sidewalk. So it's really very tough. I'm meeting with somebody, I think next week on Mount Joy in Edmond. Their neighborhood is asking for sidewalks. So when people want it, we basically follow up. But it's usually hard to get people in the community to agree to have it on their side of the street.
Thank you. Mr. Chaplin?
We need a modern communication system that connects town residents and our elected officials. When people see the need for something such as a sidewalk on their street, there should be an organized system for them to be able to petition, either in person, on paper, or online. We haven't had any sorts of innovations that make it easier for residents to have their voice at town meetings, to bubble up ideas to those that elect us. Instead, one person has to go door to door, all the way to Mountjoy Avenue to find out what the truth is. Instead, we need to empower our residents and their voice to bring it out.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Finer, this question. We will request that the timekeeper hold up the signs so that the audience can see how much time is left and if it's time to stop. Thank you. We'll start with Mr. Finer. How do you feel about the disparity in tax rates between independent homeowners and those who live in condominium homes?
Well, the town basically doesn't want to change the homestead law for existing condo and condo owners because it would have a very, very big impact. However, we are seeking legislation that would change the law for going forward. So if a new owner, a new developer wants to build a condo in Greenburgh, we want the new buildings to be taxed at the same residential rates. Also, the interesting thing about the homestead law, because this was a discussion about a year ago, is that if we change the classification of taxes, it would also have impacted the businesses. So Central Avenue 119 and Route 9A, the taxes on those properties would have gone up, and that would have created major problems for the business districts. It would have encouraged businesses on Central Avenue, the Greenburgh portion, to go to White Plains, which would be taxed less, or to go to Yonkers, which would have been taxed less. So it really is complicated, and this is something that requires state legislative action. And I did meet with Assemblywoman Sandra Galiff, who is the head of, I think, the Real Property Committee in Albany, and we're working on this going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Chaffee.
My quick answer is I pretty much agree with Mr. Finer on that one, so I'm going to take my time to instead talk about why people are concerned about that issue. It's fundamentally because our taxes keep going up. And so the way I'll address taxes here is now for those that live in the villages. Folks that live in the villages pay the village tax and they pay their town tax. They pay a whole lot of money to their villages, they pay less to their town. Now, I say tax control starts with the town because everybody in the town that owns property pays into that town budget. We're going to open up that budget to such a degree that people are going to look at their own budget, their fire budget, their school budget, their village budget, and they're going to say, we want our budget to be as open as it is in Greenburgh. We are going to usher in a new era of accountability on the budget with extreme levels of detail to ensure that our officials are spending our money as wisely as possible. This is for the residents. We're also going to increase trust with the villages and the town. This opens up the opportunity for villages to start collaborating and sharing services. Now, there's some shared services that have happened, but and Mr. Finer will tell us about those, but there's an opportunity for so much more. The bold plan I want to see is very large-scale solar, saving us $500,000 a year, and that's just the start. Solar on top of commercial buildings, school buildings, government buildings. That's an initiative that the next supervisor has to lead. It's bold and it's urgent, and it will open up our minds, and we will realize that we are all living in one environment, and we can work together to make it better.
Thank you.
I just want to mention that for people living in unincorporated Greenburgh, 83% of your tax bill goes to the schools, fire district, or the county. We collect about 17% of the tax bill, but we are a tax collector, so people write the checks out to the town, so they think that the bill they're paying to the town when we have no control over 83% of the budget. If you live in a village, it's usually about 2% of your taxes go to the town. Relating to solar, I believe the planning board, when we approved the Starbucks insisted on solar, and we've
Thank you.
And there we go.
Okay.
Mr. Feiner has an answer that you'll hear from him often. We can't do much as the town. It's only 17%. But I'm saying tax control starts with the town because everybody pays into it. We will set the example and build a culture of openness with the town budget that you will begin to expect and then see with all the other taxes that you pay here in Greenburgh.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Chaffee. With town-wide food scrap recycling coming to Greenburgh, how should the expense of this program be allocated to the various budgets?
Give me 1 moment, please. I have in front of me the 2 budgets, just so that I'm prepared. Food scrap's not listed at the top level, I don't believe, so I don't have the answer. Now, of course, Mr. Feiner has tremendous experience in the town of Greenburgh, and he'll know the answer. But this is not something that you need to know the answer to immediately. So you go back to principles, you go back to your training, you go back to West Point, doing the right thing when no one's looking, being fair. Your principles are, the right thing is, even when people are not paying attention to the town budget, you make sure that the people who are reaping the benefits are also paying for it. And you empower them with information to say that, here's this new expansion of food scrap recycling. Do you want to see it, or do you want to curl it back? If it's going to be town-wide, which I think it is expanding to, then it makes natural sense that it would be on a town-wide budget. And if it's just going to be unincorporated Greenburgh, then it should just be unincorporated Greenburgh. I think there's also a tremendous opportunity to increase the program, but it has to be done in a way that residents want. So I want to bring in participatory budgeting to give residents a voice as to whether we expand programs that are very beneficial. Because I don't have 28 years of experience and I have to do a lot of learning, it's also an opportunity for us to all learn together. As a software developer, we work in the open. We put all the information out there. We make our decisions patiently. We make our decisions with input from stakeholders. So whether food scrap recycling is going to be included on the townwide budget or the unincorporated budget, believe me, you will have a say.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I'm very excited about this initiative. We did get a grant from the state of $250,000 to start food scrap recycling. And why this is important is because if people recycle their food scraps, it will mean that we won't have to pick up as much garbage. In fact, we think we probably will be able to reduce the typical garbage by maybe a third. So I think this is really, a great initiative. The food scrap recycling program has been wildly successful throughout.
No, this is not a rebuttal. This is 1 minute and 30 seconds.
It's been wildly successful. We basically have a lot of people dropping off their food scraps at Anthony Veteran Park. We're going to open up another drop-off location at the town hall. And another thing is we met last week with all the mayors. And we discussed with all the mayors this initiative, and we asked the mayors if they would like us to do this for the villages. And I think there was a general consensus that they are very open to it because there's a lot of community support for food scrap recycling. So I would put this in our A budget, not the unincorporated, not the B budget, which only serves unincorporated Greenburgh. And I think that we have to start addressing sustainability, make the community greener. It's not only this, it's solar. There's so many other things that we can do.
For a 30-second rebuttal, when I think about food scraps, I think about scraps. And I think about what the budget has become for some areas of Greenburgh that depend on it more and more. At the community center, you go there on Friday night, second floor is dark, beautiful computer lab, no instructors. 8 years without programs for youth with possibilities. Those folks are not in this room right now. We need to remember that we are one town. The budget needs to serve all of us. Food scraps are certainly important, but we need to think about the most vital things for our entire community
Thank you.
inclusively.
Can I respond to that? You know, I don't know what community center you've been to, because I go to the community center a lot, and I see a lot of people taking advantage of the programs and benefiting from the services. Our community center was one of, I believe, 5 centers in the nation that was built during the LBJ, the Great Society years. They do wonderful things. They have homework programs, recreation, programs, social service
Thank you.
programs. They're amazing, and it's usually crowded when I go there.
Thank you. All right, the next question is, what are your feelings concerning the consolidation of the fire departments, and also about building a new police headquarters? And I have completely lost track. So sorry. Who is first? I think it's you, Mr. Feiner.
Well, with the police and the courthouse, we basically hired a firm that is going to be looking at different options for the police and courthouse. We're going to also ask them to advise us how much we could sell the existing courthouse and police station for. I believe that we do need another police and courthouse, but we also have to make sure that it's done in a fiscally prudent way. And I want to make sure that the community is involved in the process, because it's very, very important that if we take a major infrastructure step, that people buy in and feel that it's being done not because we want a new building, but because it's essential and it's needed for public safety purposes. So right now we're just beginning the process, and there will be many, many community meetings before anything happens. In terms of the fire consolidation issue, I, for years, have suggested that we consolidate fire districts, and I basically was a leader with not that many followers because there wasn't that much community support for the idea, but I do think that consolidation would save the taxpayers money, because many of the fire districts are almost as expensive as the town. And I honestly think that if you want to save money, people have to do things differently. And it's easy to say, "Oh, I'm going to do things."
Stop.
I agree with what Mr. Feiner said, so I'll use my time to share some information that maybe not a lot of people in Greenburgh know about. The last competitive election was 2007, and since then there was a federal court case that had dragged on for many years from some actions that Mr. Feiner and other folks in the town board had taken. These are the words from that federal court coming from 2012. Not ancient history, 2012. It's about a religious discrimination suit. The town attempted to extort from a church a payment in lieu of taxes. It ignored and then replaced its planning commissioner when he advocated on the church's behalf. And town staff intentionally destroyed relevant evidence. Supervisor Feiner, also a licensed attorney, testified that he did not refrain from destroying documents, even though he anticipated litigation in this matter as early as December 2001. So when we think about why we have a trust problem between the villages and the town, why the villages cannot consolidate services with the town because they do not trust us, this is one of the big reasons why. We need a fresh start in Greenburgh.
I just was reviewing my notes on that, and this happened in 1997, many, many years ago. And I should mention that when you were talking about somebody destroying evidence, there was a councilwoman who basically threw out a copy of a document that was given to the other side. It wasn't the original. We gave thousands and thousands of documents relating to Fortress Bible. I think we had bad legal representation on that. Obviously, there's different people involved now. And I also voted against Fortress Bible because of the traffic concerns.
Excuse me, we just determined that you could have the full 90 seconds because he's responding to a question that wasn't even asked.
Yeah, I mean, in 1996, the Fortress Bible Church approached the town regarding development of land in the area adjacent to Rumber Park for a new church facility. The application was reviewed by the zoning and planning committees and the Greenburgh Police Department. We reached out to community groups for input regarding the appropriateness of the site. And there was unanimous response from the police chief and from everybody reviewing this that this was not a good location for proposed use. It's also interesting that after the church got their building permit, because of the court order, the church was never built. So maybe the church realizes that it's a bad location, just like we realize it, because right now that land is vacant.
Thank you.
I'll take my 30-second rebuttal then. Maybe the reason the church didn't build is because they don't trust the town. Mr. Feiner says he had bad legal advice. The court said that he actually testified, these are the court's words, that he did not refrain from destroying documents, even though he anticipated litigation as early as December 2001. We talk about maybe this is a traffic problem. No, this was unconstitutional. We're still paying for it. It was the largest religious discrimination settlement, $6.5 million, paying through 2024.
Well, you know, we might be paying for that now, but I feel we've gotten so much more in grants and good, sound fiscal policies. We bought a town hall that cost the developer $12 million to build. We got it for $6.8 million. So we've saved taxpayers a lot of money.
Thank you. Okay. We are running into the end of our evening. Many of the last questions are similar and have to do with accountability. What kind of accountability should be in place for the town supervisor? You know, would you be willing to hire a professional municipal manager? Would you forego your salary? If elected, would you seek input? This is to Mr. Choppy. Would you seek input from Mr. Feiner for his experience? And to Mr. Feiner, you know, would you welcome the help for the notification system that has been offered? So this is a mishmash of questions. Are you understanding how they all fit together with accountability? Okay, thank you. All right, so I think Mr. Choppy.
The first person I emailed when I was running for town supervisor was Mr. Feiner. I made a promise to him that I will keep this free of personal attacks. I respect that what he's done for the town, and I'm only running on his record. So I just read from court documents. That's his record. So I want to make that clear. I respect what he's done. And I understand that many people like Mr. Feiner. He's a likable person. But when it comes down to it, we're running without an organized system. And that fundamentally transforms into accountability. The debate we just had about West Hill and whether he dragged his feet for too long or not, no one knows the truth because you cannot go on the town's website to find a record of that problem or any problem you've ever emailed Mr. Feiner about. Many people with the same problems don't even know that they share the same problem. When all the information is trapped in his email inbox, we are unempowered. As a software developer, I mentioned we work in the open. Each problem needs to be documented because it will help you hold me accountable.
Thank you.
First of all, in terms of the issue of whether we should have a manager or not, I feel I am the town manager. And I feel I do a great job. I've been town manager, town supervisor for 28 years. We run efficiently, effectively. We have a AAA bond rating, which 99% of the communities around the country don't have. We basically, Moody's, Standard & Poor's have said we're fiscally prudent, management. We have been honored by financial institutions for our transparent budget for 26 years. We've gotten this award that most communities never get. We've gotten grants. We've purchased buildings like the town hall almost for half price. Our employees, the department heads, and many employees, they return emails, not only me, evenings, weekends, holidays. I have the town attorney is in Europe on vacation, and he's calling me right now. Over the weekend, there were town employees, not department heads, who were returning emails. One person, we're doing a sidewalk tour next week. He's making himself available on Sunday. You don't get that from most governments. So we have outstanding concierge service. Our services are probably better than the Ritz-Carlton. Because if you go to a luxury hotel and you have a problem, fat chance that you're going to get a call back in 5 minutes.
Thank you. Okay.
For a brief rebuttal,
Sure.
in terms of accountability, it takes a competitive election for a lot to come to the surface. What we found out this summer when investigating why we're having a 42% increase in our water bill was that just a few years ago, we had a $5 million contract awarded when there was only one bid given. And this is not a problem that was just in the past. Sprain Road, Ardsley Road intersection, one of the most dangerous intersections where we would hope we would get many different bids for our personal safety. Again, one bid. We need more accountability.
Can I respond? Okay, relating to the bids, we are now forming a citizens committee that will review all bids and help with the specifications before the bids are, the RFPs are sent out. We had, for the water docket bid that you were talking about, 351 potential vendors got the bid. 23 companies looked at the bid. We rebid, and we only got one. But we're going to try hard to make sure that in the future we expand the list. Maybe instead of 351 potential vendors, we could have more. Now, Yonkers paid 1.7. They had 5 bids. We have one bid, and we got it for 1.6 million.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to have one more question and then closing statements. This question, again, will go back to the concerns that have been expressed about Edgemont. So this is a two-part question. One is, why exactly does Edgemont want to incorporate as a village? It seems to me it makes more sense for us to be consolidating services rather than splitting up into smaller and smaller entities. And would you support legislation to allow everyone in Greenburgh to vote to dissolve existing villages of Ardsley, Elmsford, Irvington, Dodds, or East
You know, I don't know, when you say Edgemont supports incorporation, I don't know if Edgemont supports incorporation. There's a lot of people in Edgemont that I've spoken to feel it's a bad idea. So, you know, my feeling is that I don't want to speak for people. I don't want to speculate what people would say. But all I could say is that whether Edgemont does stay in, the town, I'm going to work really hard to make everyone in Edgemont feel that they're getting the representation that they deserve, that they get the highest quality services, that when they call, that you get back to them, immediately. And I feel, when I go around Edgemont, I feel that a lot of people are really appreciative because we have a fantastic sanitation department, and they know it, and they thank us for it. We have a great highway department. We have outstanding police. When there's burglaries, we've caught people who commit burglaries. We put license plate readers to make people safe. We have a neighborhood land use committees that work with the Edgemont community to address land use issues and traffic safety issues. We make house calls. So I think that at the end of the day, most people in Edgemont will be pleased to stay within the town because they're going to realize that they're very lucky that they live in one of the best communities around, the most responsive community, and a community that provides concierge service that no other community, including Scarsdale, gives.
Thank you. Mr. Choppy.
The issue about Edgemont Incorporation is not about services, it's not about money. Instead, it's about one community being played against another community. When Mr. Feiner announced that he had a challenger just a few weeks ago, he mentioned the first thing, that I'm from Edgemont, as if that means anything related to what I think about Edgemont Incorporation or not, knowing full well that I'm recusing myself from the Edgemont Incorporation matter, as we've already explained. When I came back after 20 years serving in the military, owning and selling a small business, working in open government in Washington, D.C. with the Obama administration, I'm here in Hastings-on-Hudson, moved back to Edgemont in January, and decide to run in March. I start getting petition signatures walking around different neighborhoods. When I explain that I'm from Edgemont, a neighborhood I moved back to and brought my children back to because I love it, that is my home, I'm shocked to see that people are upset at me because I'm from Edgemont, and I wonder, how did it get this way? If you're concerned that Edgemont is going to incorporate, you must ask yourself, which candidate up here is going to take a completely objective look and recuse themselves? And which candidate, if he stays in office, will encourage more people to vote, to incorporate, to get their autonomy, to get away from a government that they do not trust?
Can I just say one thing? First of all, you said that I insulted you by saying you live in Edgemont. I want to let everybody know when I was 5 years old and 6 years old, I lived on Clarendon Road, which is in Edgemont, and I'm proud of it. So I'm an Edgemont, you're a native, and and I would like to say that all the people that I know who are in Edgemont are proud that they live there. I don't take it as an insult that you live in Edgemont. I take it as a compliment. You know, every section of the town is a great section of the town, and people should be proud that you live in, whether it's Edgemont or Fairview or East Irvington or Hastings or Ardsley.
Okay. So our closing statements are in reverse order of the opening statements. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes with a 30-second rebuttal option, and we will hear first from Lucas Chucky.
Take a moment, look at the people next to you. Just take a moment. Look who's here tonight, people you've never met, but people who came out because they care about our community. Now think about how many people are not here tonight. How many people are not here because they cannot be here? Because they're working 2 jobs? Childcare situation is too difficult? Maybe they're ill, elderly? We are one Greenburgh. When I chose my campaign slogan, it was all of us. All of us. Not one neighborhood against another, but all of us. And the way that we get to a place where we can think about town problems together is that we have to be, number 1, empowered with information about what's going on, and number 2, given a voice before decisions are made, so that we don't find out there's another car dealership popping up down the road when instead we need a grocery store. I want to give a deep thanks to all the volunteers that have helped me. I'm at greenburgh.us. Cliff Abrams, my wife, and fellow residents, we have a long journey ahead, regardless of the outcome of this election. Stay engaged, whomever wins. Hold that person accountable. Look out for your neighbors, see how you can get involved, and demand more from our Greenburgh government, because it's time that it delivered.
In my opening comments, I outlined a broad vision for the town. In conclusion, I'd like to say how proud I've been to have had the privilege of serving the town of Greenburgh. I've been active in public service since high school, when I successfully lobbied the county to close the Bronx River Parkway for bicycle Sundays and to build the first bikeway in Westchester County. I established and ran the first bus service from Hartsdale to New York City as a volunteer to compete with the railroad before the county took it over. I led a successful effort that resulted in women being admitted as members of a politically influential and prestigious club. I ran for county legislator, won, and worked for a more open and transparent government. We purchased the old Putnam Trail and turned it into the South County and North County bike path. As town supervisor, we expanded parks from 200 acres to 600 acres. We purchased a new town hall that cost the developer $12 million to build, and we got it for $6.8 million. We have approved more affordable housing and was one of the few local governments not ordered by the federal government to build 750 affordable housing because we did it on our own. We were exempt from the lawsuit. We have built playgrounds. We started a food scrap recycling program. We've addressed infrastructure. We've kept taxes below the tax cap. This year we're going to have a 0% tax hike. We've earned the highest bond rating possible that saves you 6 figures a year. We've increased recycling at the same time we cut staff. We've closed down illegal massage parlors. We attracted major businesses to the town and obtained millions of dollars for more sidewalks and safety improvements. And we even persuaded Metro North to build a new elevator at the train station. We are a diverse community with different cultures working and living together. I have a list of many, many significant accomplishments over the last 2 years alone. And I have many, many plans for the next 2-year term. I hope you'll support me and my administration to continue our winning tradition to all residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Serving the public in any elected capacity is a noble and laudable calling. Being a candidate takes courage, commitment, and a dedication to the common good. I would like to thank both of these candidates for their participation this evening, and I'd like to thank the community. Thank you for coming out the way you did, for showing up. It's very impressive. Please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 5th, or you may vote early this year. Either way, please vote. Thank you.